Hello everybody, this is an introduction to the controllers, and we've had some changes since we last recorded this video, so I just want to do a quick introduction to the two Radio Master controllers that might be included with your kit, walk through the buttons and what they do, and give a general outline as to how they connect with your WingSmith drone. So we have two controllers here. On the left we have the Radio Master Pocket, and on the right we have our TX15 Max. Either controller might come with your WingSmith kit, and depending on which version you have, you'll have a particular button layout that comes default. Please understand and note that all the button configurations can be changed within Betaflight as we use the open source software, so I will be showing you how to do that in another video. This video is intended to show you the button layout. So let's get started. The first thing to understand is how to turn your controllers on. There is a central button on each controller that is marked by the power indicator. On the left here, I'm going to press and hold for 4 seconds.
Welcome to HTX.
And you'll see the controller turn on. The throttle warning means that the throttle stick has not been depressed as far as it can to the bottom. The switch warning means that not all the switches on the controller, and in this case, a switch is anything that can be placed in a position that is not by default. So if you can see here, there is a switch that has not been placed in the default position, which is the farthest position from yourself. Now that I've set all the sticks to their default position with throttle at 0 and all triggers to their default position, the controller demonstrates its standard display and is ready for use. You also will note that you can fold out the antenna, which will give you the best reception possible. On this controller, we're faced with a very similar startup process, and I'm just going to demonstrate the same thing. So I've intentionally moved the throttle control so it's not at 0. I will hold the button.
Welcome to HTX.
We have a color display at the bottom, and you can see another warning. So the throttle warning means to, again, place it at the default position, and here we actually have triggers along the top just like we did on our Pocket, but we also have triggers on our front here. We have these different switches. So I'm going to press all the switches to their default position, and now you can see that our radio is ready for use. Okay, so now we'll get started with the actual flight controls. All WingSmith drones come by default in mode 2. This means that your stick on the left will do throttle by throttling up and down. That will do exactly as it describes. Will be the increase or the decrease in the throttle applied to your motors. You also have what's called a yaw, which is a turn in a flat plane, and that is applied by going left or right on your control stick on the left. On the other hand, we have our right control stick, and first that I'm going to talk about is roll. So roll is applied by going right and left, and you might notice that we always have a spring that will pull these sticks back into position, and here on the left stick we have the same thing on our yaw, but not on our throttle. Finally, we have our pitch, which is applied by pushing up or down on the right stick. So for a visual demonstration, throttle is going to be effectively how much juice is applied to your motor. So if you want to go faster, you push the throttle stick up. If you want to go slower or stop your motors, you pull it all the way down to throttle equals 0. If you want to rotate in a flat plane, you can apply that by going left or right on your yaw, which will rotate you, like I said, in a flat plane. Or you can apply your pitch to go forward and backward, and that will pitch you forward or backward. And finally, you can do your roll to the right or to the left, and that is rolling like a barrel to the right or left. So now you have all the basic flight controls, but that doesn't actually get your quad flying. There are some other controls that you're going to need to basically get off the ground, and then some more advanced features. So let's get started on those. The most basic is going to be your arm switch. On a WingSmith drone, your arm switch is always going to be the left top button. So here, I'm going to press this button, and on the Pocket, this is SA. So if I press SA in, I don't have a quad with me, but you would see in your goggles that your quad is now armed and your motors will start spinning on your TX15 Max, it is your SF, or I'm sorry, your SE trigger. Press that in, and again, your motors will start spinning. Now there is one thing to note. Your motors will not start spinning if you have a WingSmith drone that has a GPS system that has not yet achieved 8 satellite locks, because there is a minimum number of satellites that need to be locked for it to engage a home position. If you don't have a GPS, this isn't something you need to worry about. You'll normally just see a configuring little text while your gyroscope sets its level point, and then you'll arm like normal, your motors will start and you'll be ready to fly. But if you have a GPS system, if you don't have 8 GPS, you won't be able to arm. You'll see this as an error that will show up with a GPS error, and as soon as you get 8 satellites, you'll have a beep that is indicated through your controller and through your goggles, and that will indicate that you're ready to arm. It will just error out. You can again change that in beta flight so that you can arm without the satellite lock, but please note that if you do that, you won't have a home position. So your return to home function won't function if you arm without 8 satellites. Again, that will be covered how to change that in another video. So we have our controls, we know how to arm, and now we're going to get into some other controls that are also useful, but if you're just trying to get flying, these are your basics. Everything we're about to go through is advanced or additional, and so you can basically take what you've learned here and apply it to the simulator and only come back to the video once you are ready to actually take your quad into the air. Okay, so now we're going to cover some more advanced options or features that are configured on your controllers. We're going to start with our flight modes, and I'm going to show you on the Radiomaster Pocket as we have this switch, which is our SB on our Radiomaster Pocket. We have 3 flight modes. The first is acro mode, which is set by default. This is going to be your basically manual mode. You're in full control, and so all of the motions that you're taking with the sticks are going to be like driving a manual car. Your quad is going to respond to everything that is applied here, and there is no return to center. It's just reacting to whatever you input it. So it's all relative to its current position. If you'd like to start very basic, like a DJI drone, you can push this up to this setting where it's closest to you, and now you're going to be flying in a self-leveling mode. This mode is going to be where it's easiest to control from a beginner's perspective, and it's called angle mode because the drone will always return to a level plane whenever you stop inputting any kind of input on the controller. The only exception to that is throttle, because throttle is always controlled by its position on the left stick here. So how this will work is that, say you want to pitch forward, you'll hold the stick, and as you return it to center, it won't stay in the position that you left it. It will actually return always. It will follow always back to center. So that is what is the easiest way to get started. I would not recommend you stay with that mode for very long because you'll build some bad habits, but it is a great way to learn because it's the most like a more traditional drone, like a DJI drone, and angle mode is a great way to just literally get your drone off the ground. You can throttle up, see what it's like, you can turn in a plane, you can pitch forward, pitch back, bring it down, and then disarm, and it's a great way to start. If you wanted to do the same thing with your TX15 Max, we actually apply that to the SA switch because it also has 3 positions. And so if you were armed and you're throttling up, this is going to set you also in that angle mode. So exactly the same. You can pitch forward, pitch back, roll right, roll left. You can yaw, which is a little difficult to show you with one in my hand here, but you can yaw. And again, you'll always return to the level position in angle mode. So the second flight position is if we set this to the middle position, and just like the TX15 Max here, we can set this to the middle position. And this is in a assist mode. So now we are flying in effectively half freestyle or half angle and half acro. And I believe this is called acro assist. So the idea is that near the center of the sticks, it's going to react exactly the same as angle mode, but as you push the stick to the extremes on either side, it's going to act like acro. This means that if you're just gently flying and you're, wanting to position over something, or you're just taking it easy, it's going to be exactly like learning on the angle mode. But if you want to try a flip, you can, push forward and you'll continue to flip. When you return it to center, it's going to level. Again, I wouldn't recommend staying on this mode for too long. It's really just to help you bridge the gap between where you're starting in angle mode and then arriving finally in acro mode. And as you gain more experience, I would suggest that you leave these in the default position for acro mode, because acro mode is how the WingSmith drones are intended to be flown. It's totally fine if you would prefer to fly them in a different flight mode, but they're designed for manual control, high performance, high speed, and so I think you'll get the most out of your WingSmith drone by using it in this fashion. And while it does take a while to learn and get the muscle memory of how to control a drone in acro mode, it is highly recommended because not only does it form good habits, it's also, in my opinion, more fun. So you can always use your own judgment and apply this however you like, but that is why we've set acro mode as the default, is because it unlocks the full performance of your drone and it's just a really good time. Okay, so that controls everything that describes everything about how to control your drone in the air, how to arm your drone, how to change your flight style. And now we're going to get into our safety features, or our recovery features, because the right corner of the drones are effectively dedicated to that. On the pocket, we actually had to move one of the buttons here, and I will describe that as we go. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to show you the beeper, because sometimes you lose track of your drone, especially if you're flying around high grass. You may bring your quad down and have lost its position. Those of you with GPS may use a return to home function, or may be able to use the GPS to locate your drone, but a buzzer is a very effective way of recovering your drone without needing any special technology, because they usually, on the larger drones, have a LiPo built right into them, because on the WingSmith drones we use the ViFly Finder 2 that has its own dedicated battery, and so if your battery ejects, the battery on the buzzer will continue to work, and so you'll still have access to your buzzer control, and it will automatically fire as soon as your battery is disconnected. Whereas on some of the smaller drones, like the Hummingbird and the Hummingbird Pro, it's an active buzzer where the LiPo battery needs to stay connected for it to be active. But because of the weight difference between a large 5-inch quadcopter and the Hummingbird and the Hummingbird Pro, it is very unlikely that your battery will eject. It would have to be an extremely hard connection, and if that happens, it is unfortunate, but it's very unlikely that your battery will eject. And so I'll show you how to activate that on our Radio Master Pocket. If you click the right button in the top right here, and this is SD, your buzzer will activate. And as long as this button is depressed, or as long as this trigger is pushed in, your buzzer is going to continue to alarm. As soon as you release the button, the buzzer stops firing. On our TX15 Max, this is triggered by putting the SD into either the middle or the far position, the closest to you. So if it's in default position, your buzzer is not going to be activated. If you put it into center position, your buzzer will be activated. If you push it again into the closest position to you, your buzzer is still activated. And so there's two positions where your buzzer is activated and one where it isn't, which is the default position. Then we have our GPS rescue. Now, GPS rescue is applied only to the drones that actually have a GPS installed. You'll be able to tell if you have a GPS installed by seeing if your WingSmith drone has a GPS tail where your GPS will be located. if your GPS has been activated, as in you've waited long enough to set the home position by getting the 8 satellite lock, and you're more than 100 meters away from where you started, you'll be able to activate return to home. Return to home is a fail-safe position, and you can always disarm your quad to simply drop it out of the air. Again, you can disarm by releasing the button in the top left, and in this case that's SE. Again, on the Radiomaster Pocket, that's SA. But if you don't want to disarm, you would prefer your quad to return. Maybe you've lost your video connection, but you'd like your quad to come back over the hill or from behind the building, or you've simply gone too far and you just have lost track of it, you want it to return. You can apply that by, on the TX15 Max, switching your SC into either the center or the far, again, the closest position. So you've got your default position where your GPS is not activated, its return to home feature. If you push it into the center position, it will begin return to home. And if you push it into the closest position, it will continue to fire return to home. The only time it won't activate the return to home feature is if it's in the default position. On the Radiomaster Pocket, that same function is applied here to the SD trigger. And so in the default position, you're not returning to home. This is because when you take off with the quad, you don't want it firing return to home. But if you push it into either the center position or into the closest position to you, your GPS return to home feature is going to work, again, as long as you have the 8 satellite lock and you're more than 100 meters from yourself. In the default position, that's not going to fire. And that basically covers your 2 safety or your 2 recovery features, which are both your buzzer and your GPS. Again, your buzzer is covered from the outside here, and then your GPS is covered with your inner switch. The idea that really helps keep that straight is that you have escalating features from the outside in, and so the buzzer is treated as a less extreme recovery option than your GPS return to home, and you always have access to your disarm through your arming switch, which is again in the top left. That's the most important switch. You're always going to want to have access, or you're always going to want to be aware of your arm disarm. Finally, there is one final feature that is available to both controllers by default, and that is your turtle mode. So turtle mode is if your quad is upside down and you want to try and flip it over and get it flying again, you can activate turtle mode. The way that this works is that you would hold the turtle mode button and then press the arm button on your controller, and your quad will be in turtle mode, where a little arrow will show you in which direction to hold the right stick to make the quad flip over. A quick warning that turtle mode will not detect if your quad is in deep grass, and so if a motor is obstructed, if it's in a tree with a branch, or it is wrapped in wire, or if there is long grass that's wrapping in the motor, you can actually burn your motors out with this, because if they can't move, the electronic speed controller will continue to feed it electricity, and that electricity won't have anywhere to go but to become heat if the motor can't turn, and that can effectively melt your motor. So you don't want to do that. Basically use turtle mode with caution. You can use it in short grass that is like not going to obstruct the motors from turning, or you can use it on like a hard surface or something that isn't going to be wrapping or obstructing your motors. Again, I wouldn't recommend using it on sand. I wouldn't recommend using it on long grass, but this is going to have to be something that you use your best judgment on. And so now let's talk about how you activate it. For the Radiomaster Pocket, there's a button back here, it's SE, and so to activate this, you would hold this button and then press the arm switch at the top left. That will put you into turtle mode, and you'll see on your screen an arrow pointing which direction to hold the stick so that you flip, because when you hold the stick, your quad is going to try and flip over. There's a little bit of a learning curve to get used to it, but to activate it, that is how you do it. Again, it is hold this SE button and then press, while holding it, the arm button, SA, and now your quad is armed in turtle mode and you can flip over. You will need to disarm and then rearm without holding the turtle mode button to get your props spinning again and be in armed mode. So just to walk through that again, I know it's a lot of repetition, but this is a more complicated application. Is your quad is upside down, you're going to hold your turtle mode button and press your arming switch in. You're then going to push the stick in whatever direction the arrow shows you on screen, and when it's flipped over and it's right at itself, you're then not holding the turtle mode button, going to disarm, rearm, and your propeller should start spinning again. And very similarly, if you're on your TX15 Max, the turtle mode position is actually this button right here. So this is the one true change in position between the Radiomaster Pocket and the TX15 Max. Everything else has mapped relatively similarly, but on the TX15 Max, or I'm sorry, on the Pocket, your turtle mode button is on the top left here, and on the TX15 Max, it's on the top right. So again, to arm and go into turtle mode, your quad is upside down. You're going to hold your turtle mode button and arm the quad. You're then going to release both. You're going to see the arrow on screen pointing you in which direction you want to go with your right stick. You're going to hold your right stick until your quad flips over. It's going to be right side up. You're going to disarm and then rearm without holding your turtle mode button, and your propeller should start spinning again. And that basically covers all the default functions of either your Radiomaster Pocket or your TX15 Max with your WingSmith drone. All of these are configurable and changeable. You do not have to use this configuration because you can always set it in your modes tab in Betaflight. But this is how your controllers are going to arrive bound to your drone. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to WingSmith Drones at any time to clear any of this up. But we've made this instructional video just to help you get started. And please understand that drones take a little while to learn the ins and the outs. So don't get frustrated. Just give it a good, try. And we're always here to help. So this is WingSmith Drones, and I'll see you out there.